The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon. Captain Frank Miller stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the vast emptiness of space. 20 years in Earth's military had not prepared him for the wonders and dangers of interstellar diplomacy. Yet here he was, 5 years after first contact, serving as both military strategist and diplomat to beings from another world. The Eldorians had arrived in 2087. Their massive ships appeared suddenly in Earth's orbit, causing panic at first, then wonder as they broadcast messages of peace and friendship in perfect English. They claimed to represent something called the Eldorian Confederacy, a group of 87 species spread across 200 star systems, and they wanted Earth to join them. Still admiring the view, Captain? Lieutenant Samantha Wright stepped onto the deck, her footsteps echoing in the quiet room. As the ship's xenolinguist, Wright was responsible for understanding the nuances of Eldorian communication. She was also one of the few people Miller trusted completely. "Just thinking," Miller replied. 5 years of Eldorian friendship, and something still doesn't feel right. Wright moved to stand beside him. She was younger than Miller by almost 15 years, but her eyes held the sharp intelligence that had earned her this position. "I've been working on those encrypted transmissions we intercepted last week. I think you should see what I found." Miller followed her to a small conference room where a display screen showed lines of strange symbols. Some were Eldorian script that Miller recognized from years of diplomatic meetings. Others were unfamiliar. "This is a layered encryption," Wright explained. "The Eldorians use it for their most sensitive communications. It took me nearly a week to crack even this small portion." "And?" Miller asked, studying the partial translation that appeared on a second screen. "They've been classifying Earth as a Type C acquisition since before they even arrived." Wright's voice was tight with anger. "They're not allies, Captain. They're resource colonizers." Miller wasn't surprised exactly. The knot in his stomach that had been there since first contact finally made sense. "They've been playing us from the beginning. All those technological gifts were calculated to make us dependent while they positioned themselves to take control of our resources," Wright continued. "The mining rights they've negotiated, the positioning of their bases near our core infrastructure. It was never about cultural exchange or helping Earth join the galactic community." Miller nodded slowly. "I need to take this to Admiral Carter immediately. Can you prepare a complete briefing with everything you've found?" "Already done." Wright handed him a secure data tablet. "I've included my analysis of their communications patterns over the last 5 years. The evidence is clear, once you know what to look for." 2 days later, Miller stood in the secure conference room at Earth Alliance Command in Geneva. Admiral Elizabeth Carter, a stern woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, listened without interruption as Miller and Wright presented their findings. When they finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Admiral Carter's expression didn't change, but her eyes had hardened. "So the Eldorians see us as nothing more than a resource to be harvested," she finally said. "And they've been positioning themselves to take control when the time is right." "Yes, Admiral," Miller confirmed. "They've already secured rights to 60% of Earth's rare mineral deposits through what they called technology exchange programs. But the technology they've shared has been carefully limited to keep us dependent on them." Carter stood and walked to the window overlooking Lake Geneva. "They've underestimated us," she said, her voice calm and determined. "They think we're just grateful primitives, but they haven't seen what humanity does when backed into a corner." She turned back to face them. "What do we know about their true technological capabilities?" Wright stepped forward. "Based on what I've decoded, they're keeping back at least 90% of their advanced technology. But there's something else, Admiral. They've become complacent. They haven't made significant technological advances in over 300 years because they haven't needed to. They rely on overwhelming force rather than innovation." A small smile appeared on Carter's face. "And innovation is humanity's greatest strength." She tapped her finger on the conference table, thinking. "How much of their technology have our scientists been able to understand?" "More than the Eldorians realize," Miller replied. "Dr. Alan Brooks and his team have been reverse engineering Everything the Eldorians have shared, and they've made some breakthroughs the Eldorians would never expect. Good. Carter nodded decisively. As of this moment, we are initiating Operation Shadow Response. Captain Miller, you will continue your role as diplomatic liaison with the Eldorians. They must not suspect that we know their true intentions. And what will we be doing behind the scenes, Admiral? Wright asked. Preparing. Carter's voice was steel. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats before, from nature, from ourselves, but never from beyond our world. I will not allow Earth to become just another conquered planet in the Eldorian collection. She activated the room's secure communication system. This is Admiral Carter. I need a secure connection to all Earth Alliance military and scientific directors. Priority Alpha. She looked back at Miller and Wright. We have work to do. Over the next 3 years, Earth maintained its facade of grateful cooperation with the Eldorians. Captain Miller attended diplomatic functions, negotiated minor treaties, and smiled politely at Eldorian representatives while feeding them carefully crafted misinformation about Earth's technological progress. Meanwhile, in secret facilities, across the planet and in hidden bases throughout the solar system, humanity prepared. Dr. Alan Brooks led Project Prometheus, combining quantum physics with modifications to Eldorian technology. Commander Olivia Martinez developed Adaptive Shield, systems that could analyze and counter Eldorian weapons. And William Johnson, a former video game designer turned military strategist, created combat systems based on unpredictable swarm tactics that the Eldorians' rigid military doctrine would struggle to counter. The Eldorians grew more demanding with each passing month. Their requests for resources increased, and their diplomatic language became less cooperative and more directive. They began to position more ships in Earth's solar system, claiming they were there for mutual protection. As Frank Miller stood on the observation deck of the Horizon, watching an Eldorian cruiser pass by, he received a message from Admiral Carter. The High Commissioner has requested an urgent meeting in Geneva tomorrow. Our intelligence suggests they're about to make their move. Be ready. Miller took a deep breath. After years of preparation, the moment of truth was approaching. Humanity was about to show its real power, and the galaxy would never be the same. The meeting room in Geneva was designed to impress. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of Lake Geneva and the distant Alps. The long table was made of real wood, a luxury in a world where most forests were now protected. Admiral Elizabeth Carter sat at one end, her face calm despite the tension in the room. Across from her sat High Commissioner Zack Sothoryl of the Eldorian Confederacy. His blue-gray skin contrasted sharply with the bright red uniform he wore. 2 other Eldorians flanked him, their expressions unreadable. Admiral Carter, Zack Sothoryl began, his voice smooth and practiced. The Confederacy appreciates Earth's cooperation these past years. Your species has proven quite adaptable. Carter nodded politely. We're grateful for the technological insights you've shared. Yes, well. Zack Sothoryl smiled, showing teeth that were too perfect, too white. That brings us to the purpose of this meeting. The Confederacy believes it is time to advance our relationship to the next stage. He placed a thin device on the table. It projected a holographic document into the air between them. This is what we call a treaty adjustment. It outlines the next phase of Earth's integration into the Confederacy. Captain Frank Miller, standing behind Carter, studied the document carefully. The language was diplomatic, but the meaning was clear. Earth would surrender control of its remaining resource reserves and accept permanent Eldorian administrative oversight of key government functions. This arrangement has worked well for 73 other developing species, Zack Sothoryl explained, his tone suggesting he was offering a great honor. Your people will continue to thrive under our direct guidance. Admiral Carter kept her expression neutral as she examined the document. This is quite comprehensive, High Commissioner. Our council will need 72 hours to review these terms. Zack Sothoryl's smile faded slightly. I'm afraid we require an answer within 24 hours, Admiral. The Confederacy has other commitments that necessitate resolving Earth's status promptly. I see. Carter closed the projection. Then we will have our answer for you tomorrow. After the Eldorians left, Carter turned to Miller. "Is everything ready?" Miller nodded. "All Earth Alliance vessels are in position. Dr. Brooks reports that the new drive systems are fully operational. Commander Martinez has completed the final tests on the shield technology. Johnson's swarm units are deployed and waiting for activation." Carter's stern face showed the first hint of a smile. "Then, let's proceed as planned." The next day, when the Eldorian delegation returned, they found not just Admiral Carter but representatives from every Earth nation waiting for them. The atmosphere in the room had changed. The humans no longer appeared respectful and grateful. They looked determined. "We've reviewed your proposal," Carter stated flatly as soon as Zaxathoriel was seated. "We find it unacceptable." The Eldorian seemed shocked for a moment before recovering his composure. "Perhaps you misunderstand the benefits." "We understand perfectly," Carter interrupted. She activated a display screen showing decoded Eldorian communications. "We are aware of your classification of Earth as a Type C acquisition and your long-term plans for our planet." Zaxathoriel's face changed color slightly, darkening around the edges. "A regrettable misunderstanding. Perhaps you've misinterpreted." "There is no misinterpretation," Carter said, her voice cold. "We are prepared to forge a truly equal partnership with the Confederacy, or we are prepared to defend our autonomy. The choice is yours." For a moment, Zaxathoriel seemed genuinely surprised. Then his expression shifted to open contempt. "Defend? With what? The limited technologies we've permitted you to have?" He stood up, towering over the seated humans. "The Confederacy has dominated this sector for millennia. Your defiance is noted but ultimately futile." As the Eldorian stormed out, Carter activated her secure communication device. "Operation Shadow Response is now active. This is not a drill." Within hours, 7 massive Eldorian warships entered Earth's solar system. They positioned themselves in a standard formation around Earth's orbital defense platforms. From the command ship Inevitable Dominance, Admiral Vex Kalen observed the human defenses with disdain. "Primitive systems," he commented to his tactical officer. "Disable their communications and weapon platforms. No need for unnecessary destruction if they surrender quickly." The first volley from the Eldorian ship struck Earth's orbital platforms. The Eldorians expected to see explosions and debris. Instead, the energy weapons seemed to be absorbed by shield systems they had never seen before. "What is happening?" Vexakalen demanded. "Scan those platforms." Before his crew could respond, thousands of small objects suddenly appeared on their sensors, surrounding the Eldorian formation on all sides. William Johnson's swarm units had activated, emerging from their stealth mode. The Eldorian targeting systems struggled to lock onto the small, fast-moving craft. Their weapons were designed to engage large ships, not clouds of tiny vessels that moved with coordinated intelligence. "Impossible!" Vex Kalen shouted as the swarm units closed in and released precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses that bypassed Eldorian shields, a vulnerability Earth had discovered and exploited. Systems across the Eldorian ships began to fail. Weapons went offline. Communications became scrambled. Still, Vex Kalen was not concerned. The Confederacy had faced resistance before. They always prevailed through superior firepower and numbers. That confidence lasted until 6 Earth. Alliance vessels emerged from behind Mars. They moved with impossible speed, executing maneuvers that Eldorian tactical computers couldn't predict. Dr. Alan Brooks's quantum displacement drives allowed the human ships to appear almost to teleport short distances, making them nearly impossible to target. Captain Miller, now commanding the lead Earth vessel Defiance, opened a channel to the Eldorian flagship. "This is your only warning. Withdraw from Earth space immediately." On the main screen, Vex Kalen's face showed disbelief turning to anger. "You cannot hope to stand against the full might of the Confederacy," he responded, even as his tactical officer reported that 3 Eldorian vessels had already been disabled by the swarm units. "We're not hoping," Miller replied calmly. "We're demonstrating." With that, the Defiance activated its main weapon, a modified version of the Eldorians' own gravity manipulation technology that Earth scientists had repurposed. The Eldorians had used it for mining and construction. Humans had turned it into something far more powerful. A localized space-time distortion that completely immobilized the remaining Eldorian ships without destroying them. Vex Kalen watched in horror as his mighty warship became frozen in space, unable to move or fire its weapons. Similar effects trapped the other Eldorian vessels. In just 40 minutes, the entire Eldorian battle group had been neutralized without a single human casualty. On the bridge of the Defiance, Miller turned to Lieutenant Wright, who had insisted on joining this mission. Send the message we prepared to the Confederacy's Central Council. Let them know that Earth is open to genuine alliance, but we will not be colonized or exploited. Wright nodded, a small smile on her face. Do you think they'll listen now? Miller looked at the immobilized Eldorian ships on the view screen. They don't have much choice. The galaxy just witnessed what happens when someone underestimates humanity's real power. Across the galaxy, communications networks buzzed with news of the impossible. A recently contacted species had defeated an Eldorian battle group. The balance of power that had existed for centuries began to shift. And Earth, once deemed just another resource to exploit, had announced its presence to the stars not as a conquered world, but as a force to be reckoned with. News of the Eldorian defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had been under Eldorian control for centuries watched with amazement as footage of the battle leaked through secret channels. The mighty Confederacy, undefeated, for thousands of years had been humbled by a species that had only achieved spaceflight less than 200 years ago. 2 weeks after the battle, a different kind of Eldorian ship arrived in Earth orbit. This one was smaller, more elegant, and bore the gold markings of the Eldorian High Council. Admiral Carter, Captain Miller, and Lieutenant Wright waited in the same Geneva meeting room where they had rejected the Eldorian ultimatum. The doors opened to reveal an elderly Eldorian with pale blue skin, marked with the patterns that humans had learned indicated great age and status. This was Council Elder Nix Verrill, who held a rank higher than any Eldorian who had previously visited Earth. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Nix Verrill said, his voice softer and less commanding than Zax Thoral's had been. The events of recent weeks have prompted significant discussions within the Confederacy. I imagine they have, Carter replied, her tone neutral but firm. Please sit. The elder took a seat across from them. I will be direct, Admiral. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that we did not anticipate. The Confederacy wishes to avoid further conflict. As does Earth, Carter said. We have never sought war with the Eldorians or any other species. We simply refuse to be exploited. Nix Verrill nodded slowly. We have reassessed our approach to Earth, he stated carefully. The Confederacy proposes a genuine alliance, one of equals. He placed a device on the table similar to the one Zax Thoril had used, but the document it projected was very different. This one outlined trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts, with no mention of resource control or administrative oversight. Carter studied the document. And what about the other 73 developing species you've been exploiting? Nix Verrill shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That situation is under review. Your demonstration has prompted significant internal discussions within the Confederacy. What the Elder didn't say, but what Earth's intelligence networks had already discovered, was that 3 previously subjugated species had already demanded renegotiation of their treaties with the Confederacy, citing what they called the Earth precedent. I see, Carter said. Well, Council Elder, we will review this proposal carefully. Unlike last time, we will take the full 72 hours you originally offered. After the Eldorians left, Carter turned to Miller with a small smile. How many requests for diplomatic contact have we received so far? 12, as of this morning, Miller replied. All from non-Eldorian species who want to establish relations with Earth directly, without Eldorian permission or involvement. Carter nodded thoughtfully. The galaxy is changing, and faster than anyone expected. We need to be careful about our next steps. Over the next month, Earth reviewed the Eldorian proposal while simultaneously establishing first contacts with other species. The Nebulon Collective, a group of gas giant dwellers who had been trading rare atmospheric compounds to the Eldorians at unfair rates for centuries, were the first to send representatives. Your people have done what was thought impossible. The Nebulon ambassador, a floating being who resembled a luminous jellyfish, told Captain Miller. You have shown that the Confederacy is not invincible. Similar messages came from the Voltar Republic and the Cygnus Alliance, both spacefaring civilizations that had been forced into unfavorable treaties with the Eldorians generations ago. In D, a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Alan Brooks continued refining the quantum displacement drive. He worked closely with scientists from these newly contacted species, sharing knowledge that the Eldorians had kept separate for centuries. The Eldorians' greatest weapon wasn't their technology, Brooks explained to Admiral Carter during a progress report. It was their ability to keep other species isolated from each other, preventing the sharing of ideas and innovations. Commander, Olivia Martinez agreed. Her adaptive shield technology had already been improved through collaboration with Nebulon scientists, who understood energy wave patterns in ways humans had never considered. Every species thinks differently, Martinez said. When we combine our approaches, we create solutions none of us would have found alone. William Johnson, whose swarm tactics had confounded the Eldorian fleet, was now working with military strategists from 5 different species. The Eldorians relied on brute force because it had always worked for them, he explained. They forgot how to adapt, how to innovate. That was their real weakness. 60 days after the battle, Earth finally responded to the Eldorian proposal. With modifications to ensure genuine equality and safeguards against future exploitation, Earth accepted the alliance offer. But it was no longer just Earth negotiating. The agreement included provisions for the Nebulon Collective, the Voltar, Republic, and the Cygnus Alliance, the beginning of what would become the Galactic Cooperative. When the agreement was signed, Captain Miller found himself standing next to Lieutenant Wright on the observation deck of the Horizon, just as they had been when they first discovered the Eldorian deception. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Wright asked, looking out at the stars that now seemed full of possibility rather than threat. Miller shook his head. Never. I just wanted to protect Earth. I never thought we'd end up changing the galaxy. That's what the Eldorians didn't understand. About us, Wright replied. Humans don't just adapt to survive. We transform our circumstances. We turn disadvantages into strengths. A communication alert sounded, and Wright checked her device. The Eldorian delegation is arriving for the ceremony. We should go. As they walked toward the shuttle bay, Miller thought about how much had changed in just a few months. Earth had gone from being a target for exploitation to a respected power that other species sought to ally with. The moment the galaxy witnessed humanity's real power wasn't just about military victory. It was about showing what humanity truly excelled at, learning, adapting, innovating when under pressure, and bringing people together. In the shuttle bay, as he prepared to greet the Eldorian representatives, not as conquerors now, but as genuine partners, Miller felt a sense of pride not just in what humans had accomplished, but in what they might yet achieve among the stars. The galaxy had seen humanity's power. Now it would witness their potential. 6 months after the signing of the new alliance, Earth had changed in ways few could have imagined. Ships from a dozen alien species now regularly visited the solar system. Orbital stations that had once hosted only Eldorian representatives now buzzed with diverse life forms from across the galaxy. Captain Frank Miller, recently promoted to admiral, stood before the United Earth Council. His new uniform still felt stiff and unfamiliar, but the responsibility it represented weighed even heavier. The Galactic Cooperative now includes 17 member species, Miller reported to the assembled leaders. All of them former subjects or trading partners of the Eldorian Confederacy, and all of them eager to establish new relationships based on mutual respect rather than dominance. Admiral Carter, now the Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, nodded in approval. And what of the Eldorians themselves? Have they honored the new agreement? So far, yes, Miller replied. They've withdrawn their forces from the territories of cooperative members as promised. Their economy is struggling to adjust to the new reality where they can't simply take resources at will, but they're adapting. More quickly than we expected, added Lieutenant Wright, now head of the Interspecies Communication Division. Eldorian society is changing. Younger Eldorians especially are rejecting the old colonial mindset. Many are even pushing for the Confederacy, to join the cooperative as equals. The council chamber fell silent as the leaders considered this information. It was President Laura Wilson who finally spoke. We never wanted to become conquerors ourselves. Our goal was simply to protect Earth and establish our right to self-determination. It seems we've accomplished much more than that. Miller nodded. The galaxy was ready for change. Earth just provided the catalyst. After the meeting, Miller joined Dr. Alan Brooks in his laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had expanded dramatically, now housing scientists from 8 different species working together on projects that would have been impossible for any single civilization. Admiral, Brooks called out cheerfully. His hair had gone completely gray in the last year, but his eyes were bright with excitement. Just in time to see the test, the main laboratory contained what looked like a small ship's engine surrounded by monitoring equipment. Scientists of various shapes, sizes, and colors moved around it, making final adjustments. What am I looking at? Miller asked. The next generation of the quantum displacement drive, Brooks explained. But this one isn't for ships, it's for communication. He gestured to a small device on a nearby table. We've been able to miniaturize the technology with help from the Cygnus engineers. This prototype should be able to create a stable quantum link between 2 points, allowing instant communication across any distance. Instant, even between star systems? Miller asked, understanding immediately the implications. Exactly. Brooks smiled. The Eldorians kept their subject species isolated partly through controlling the flow of information. Communication between worlds had to go through their relay stations, allowing them to monitor and filter everything. A tall, thin alien with iridescent skin approached them. We're ready for the test, Dr. Brooks, the being said in a melodic voice. Brooks introduced them. Admiral Miller, this is Senior Engineer Zil Nara of the Cygnus Alliance. She's been instrumental in solving the quantum stabilization problems. The test was simple but breathtaking. A small probe equipped with the new communication device was launched into deep space. Despite being millions of kilometers away, its transmissions arrived with 0 delay. There was no lag, no waiting for signals to travel at light speed. This changes everything, Miller said quietly as they watched the results. Instant communication across the galaxy. It's just the beginning, Brooks replied. The Nebulans have theories about folding space that could revolutionize travel itself, and the Voltars have medical technologies centuries ahead of ours. Later that day, Miller met with Commander Olivia Martinez at the new Cooperative Defense Academy in Colorado. The sprawling campus trained military personnel from all member species, focusing on cooperation rather than competition. How are the joint exercises going? Miller asked as they walked through training grounds where humans worked alongside aliens of various forms. Better than expected, Martinez answered. Each species brings unique tactical approaches. The Nebulons think in 3 dimensions naturally, which makes them exceptional space strategists. The Voltars have incredible reaction times and precision. And humans, she smiled. We bring adaptability and unconventional thinking that surprises everyone, including the Eldorians, I imagine, Miller commented. Martinez nodded. They still can't quite figure out how we defeated them so thoroughly. Their military doctrine hasn't changed in 1,000 years. They never expected a young species to develop technologies beyond their understanding. It wasn't just technology, Miller said, watching a group of human and alien trainees solving a complex tactical scenario together. It was how we used it, thinking differently. That evening, Miller received an unexpected visitor in his office at Earth Defense Headquarters. Council Elder Nix Verrill, the Eldorian who had negotiated the peace, requested a private meeting. Admiral Miller, the Elder said, his once proud bearing now more subdued. "I wanted to speak with you directly, without diplomatic filters." "Of course," Miller replied, curious. "What can I do for you, Elder?" Nick Several seemed to choose his words carefully. "The Confederacy has existed for 12,000 years. For most of that time we believed our way, our dominance, was the natural order of things. In a few months, your species has forced us to question everything we thought we knew." Miller waited, sensing there was more. "Many in the Confederacy want to rebuild our fleet, to reclaim what we've lost," the Elder continued. "But others, increasingly many, see that the old ways are ending. We have much to learn from Earth and from the Cooperative." "The Cooperative would welcome Aldorian participation," Miller said, "as equals, not rulers." "That is difficult for many of my people to accept," Nick Several admitted. "But necessary, I believe, which is why I've come to ask for your help, Admiral." The request surprised Miller. "My help?" "Yes. A delegation of young Aldorian leaders wishes to visit Earth, to learn how a species so much younger than ours could develop such wisdom. I would like you to meet with them." Miller considered the request. A year ago, he would have been suspicious of any Aldorian proposal. Now he saw opportunity. "I would be honored," he replied. "True power isn't about domination, Elder Nick Several. It's about bringing people together, sharing knowledge, lifting each other up. That's what Earth wants to offer the galaxy." As the Elder left, Miller looked out his window at the night sky. Stars that once seemed distant and unreachable now represented friends, allies, and possibilities. The moment the galaxy witnessed humanity's real power hadn't been the defeat of the Aldorian fleet. It was happening now, as Earth helped shape a new galactic community based not on conquest but on cooperation. 1 year to the day after the historic battle with the Aldorian fleet, representatives from 23 species gathered on the newly constructed Harmony Station in Earth orbit. The massive ring-shaped structure represented the physical embodiment of the Galactic Cooperative's principles, a place where all species could meet as equals, sharing the same space without any one group having a position of dominance. Admiral Frank Miller stood at the viewport in the main conference chamber, watching as the last shuttles arrived. Earth looked beautiful from this distance, a blue-green jewel against the blackness of space. It was hard to believe how much had changed in just 1 year. "Nervous?" Lieutenant Samantha Wright asked, joining him at the window. Her new uniform marked her elevated position as Earth's chief diplomat to the Cooperative. "A little," Miller admitted. "I never planned on being a diplomat," Wright smiled. "None of us planned for any of this, but here we are, helping to reshape the galaxy." The chamber filled with beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Some breathed different air mixtures, requiring special masks or environment suits. Others moved on tentacles or floated above the ground. Yet despite their physical differences, they all shared a common purpose: to formalize the structure and governance of the Galactic Cooperative. President Laura Wilson of Earth stepped to the central podium. As the leader of the species that had catalyzed this new alliance, she had been asked to open the proceedings. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice calm and measured. 1 year ago, humanity was faced with a choice between submission and resistance. We chose to stand up for ourselves, not knowing that our actions would inspire others to do the same. Today, we gather not as conquerors or the conquered, but as equals with a shared vision for the future. Miller watched as her words were translated through the new instant communication devices, allowing all species to understand simultaneously. The technology that Dr. Brooks and his multi-species team had developed was already transforming galactic society. To everyone's surprise, the next speaker was a young Aldorian named Tev Maran. Unlike the older Aldorians with their rigid posture and formal speech, Tev Maran moved with an easy grace and spoke with passion. "For thousands of years, my people believed that our destiny was to rule," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "We convinced ourselves that other species needed our guidance, that our dominance was natural and right. We were wrong." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "The Aldorian Confederacy wishes to formally request membership in the Galactic Cooperative," Tevmaran continued. Not as leaders, but as equals. We have much to learn from those we once sought to control, especially from humanity. Later, during a break in the proceedings, Miller found himself approached by Commander Olivia Martinez. She had been working closely with the defense forces of various cooperative species. The Eldorian request is causing quite a stir, she said quietly. Many species are understandably suspicious. They suffered under Eldorian rule for generations. Miller nodded. Change won't happen overnight. But if we reject them, we're just creating the conditions for future conflict. We need to break the cycle. Speaking of breaking cycles, Martinez said, Dr. Brooks wants to see you. He says he has something important to show you. Miller found Brooks in a small laboratory off the main conference area. With him was a Nebulan scientist, their translucent body glowing with gentle blue light. Admiral, Brooks called out. Meet Professor Zinn, the foremost Nebulan physicist. We've made a breakthrough I think you'll find interesting. On a table between them sat what looked like a small metal sphere about the size of a baseball. It hummed softly with energy. What am I looking at? Miller asked. The future of energy production, Brooks replied with undisguised excitement. By combining Nebulan plasma containment techniques with our quantum displacement technology, we've created a power source that generates clean energy from the quantum vacuum itself. In simple terms, Professor Zinn added, their voice translated through a small device, it draws energy from the space between dimensions, causing no harm to our universe while providing nearly unlimited power. Miller stared at the small device. And this works? Brooks grinned. This prototype could power a small city indefinitely, and it's just the beginning. Zinn's team believes we can scale it up or down as needed. Think of what this means, Brooks continued. Energy scarcity has driven conflict across the galaxy for millennia. The Eldorians conquered other worlds partly to secure resources. What happens when energy becomes abundant for everyone? The implications were staggering. This could change everything, Miller said quietly. That's the point, Professor Zinn replied. When species collaborate rather than compete, we all benefit. The final session of the day was the formal signing of the Cooperative Charter. Each species representative would add their signature or equivalent mark to the document, officially bringing the new Galactic Alliance into existence. As Earth's designated signatory, Admiral Miller stepped forward when his turn came. He looked out at the assembled representatives, beings from worlds circling different stars with different biologies, histories, and cultures, all united in a common vision. He signed his name to the charter, then stepped back and addressed the gathering. When the Eldorians first came to Earth, they saw us as primitive, as resources to be exploited. They underestimated us, not just our technological potential, but our spirit. What they failed to understand, what many fail to understand about humans, is that our greatest strength isn't our weapons or our intelligence. It's our ability to connect, to empathize, to see beyond differences. Miller gestured to the diverse assembly. Look at what we've accomplished together in just 1 year. New technologies, new alliances, new ways of thinking. This is humanity's real power, not conquering, but connecting, not dominating, but lifting others up alongside us, not standing alone, but standing together. As he returned to his seat, Miller caught Wright's eye. She smiled at him, a smile of pride, of accomplishment, of hope for the future. The Galactic Cooperative was born that day, changing the course of history for countless worlds. Species that had been enemies for generations now worked together toward common goals. Knowledge that had been hoarded was now freely shared, and Earth, once a small isolated world on the edge of the galaxy, had become a beacon of a new way forward. The moment the galaxy witnessed humanity's real power wasn't in victory through force, but in the creation of peace through understanding. It wasn't about proving superiority, but about demonstrating that true strength comes from unity. And as ships from 24 worlds departed Harmony Station to spread the news across the stars, that lesson would continue to reshape the galaxy for generations to come.